Parts 2 and 3 of the OSCOLA handbook are divided into lots of short sections. Each section shows you how to reference a different source. However, this isn't very helpful if you don't know what category your source falls into, as you then don't know which section to look at. In this video, we'll look at how you can work out which OSCOLA example to follow. I'll also introduce you to section 3.4.1 of the handbook, which is really helpful for the many things that don't readily fall into one of the OSCOLA categories. Let's start by looking for clues that can help us identify what our source is. Firstly, is the resource on your module's online reading list? Remember, every module has a link down the right-hand side on Moodle, which takes you to its online reading list. If it is on your reading list, look at how it is described. For example, the bottom source here is labelled article, so I know I need to follow the journal article example in the OSCOLA handbook. What's also handy for referencing is that if I click on the article's title, the record expands and I can see things like the volume number, which I need for my footnote. This trick doesn't always work though, as there's only a small number of options to pick from when the reading list is created. See how the second item on this list is labelled as document. That description doesn't really help us on our OSCOLA mission. Similarly, you can look for clues on library search. Again, look at how the sources are described. And again, you can click on the item's title to find out more information. For example, who a book's publisher is. The next question to ask is, what information do I have about this source? Imagine you were trying to identify an animal. You could say, well, it hasn't got wings, so it's not a bird, or it's got 6 legs, so I think it's an insect. You're systematically looking at what features your animal has and doesn't have, because you know that to belong in a certain group, an animal has to have certain features. While less cute and cuddly, referencing works in the same way. When we look at the journal article example in the OSCOLA handbook, we can see it needs 2 titles, an article title and journal title. If our source doesn't have those 2 bits of information, then maybe it's not a journal article. Talking of journal articles, these can sometimes be labelled in a number of ways. Common names are legislative comment, case comment, review article and editorial. All of these are types of journal article, so all of these can be referenced by following the journal article example in the OSCOLA handbook. Tucked away in the OSCOLA handbook is some specific advice for other types of material. If the author of your source is the Law Commission, then there's a section on that. If your source came from a newspaper or newspaper website, for example, The Guardian or The Times, then there's a section on that. Many UK government publications are published as command papers. You can recognise a command paper because it will have a command paper number, CM for short, at the bottom of the front page. Again, there's a section on that. Finally, if you're still stuck, there's a category of other secondary sources. Often these are reports, briefing papers, etc. that have been produced by an organisation and published on their website as a PDF. For other secondary sources like these, read section 3.4.1 of the OSCOLA handbook. The template at the top of this section is flexible enough to reference anything. If you look at the template, it has a slot for additional information. Think about what information you have and what would be most helpful for your reader to know. If it would help your reader, you can also give a web address and the date of access. One of the examples in this section of the OSCOLA handbook shows you how. Just use your common sense and decide what information to slot into this template. A quick word about authors before we end. Authors aren't necessarily people. Authors can be organisations. It's very common for sources like reports, briefing papers and websites to not have a named person as the author. So you can just use the name of the organisation, for example, House of Commons Library or Home Office, as the author. You can now watch any of the other OSCOLA videos in this series and also find good quality OSCOLA advice and guidance on the library website. And do get in touch with me if you're still stuck or confused.